Currently, 300 million people live in Africa without access to reliable electricity. Closing the energy gap will help the continent to create millions of new jobs and raise living standards. To talk more about energy self-sufficiency in Africa, we can speak with Vincent Nkong-Njock, the managing director of IEAE, an African energy conglomerate. Vincent, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
I want to begin by asking you if you could explain what are some of the challenges that are facing the energy sector in Africa.
Yes, I would like to highlight the fact that the number of people accessing to energy in Africa is really very limited. And most of the people are always talking about the issue related to the resources. But it's more a lack of a strategic vision. As you know, one of the first things by developing energy, it is to have appropriate planning. And government, most of the time, react instead of planning ahead. Energy planning is one of the key issues, and this has to be done using, I can say, the planning tools available and acceptable by all. And after that, as you know, before building a house, you need a foundation. Exactly like in energy, it is important to have the required infrastructure that is needed in order to absorb energy. This goes with regulatory system, procurement mechanism, financing, funding and financing mechanisms that are not always appropriated here because you do not buy an energy infrastructure like you can buy a bread in a shop. You understand? The quality management, human resources, all those infrastructure are required to be fully established before beginning building appropriate installation. One of the other issue also, it is the transformation of natural resources. As you know, I am coming from Cameroon. And in my country, we export our oil and we import the necessary oil that will be used as fuel for power plant and so on. And you can see that the price of our electricity, it is too high. It is almost the double of other countries. And with all those challenges today, our industrialization could not be further developed. And this is the problem Africa is facing today.
It's interesting that you bring up the question of investment in infrastructure. China has invested quite a lot in the continent. They've been working on oil and gas projects. Can you tell us a little bit more about that relationship, and is it good for Africa?
I will say all the investment could be good for Africa, but the problem today is that the tariffication of oil and the feeding tariff most of the time are too high. Why? Because the financing mechanisms are not appropriate, and most of the regulatory bodies here, or some of the regulatory bodies, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, are not really fully aware on the real tariff, and you will see the feeding tariff being too high. The problem today is that, yes, China are investing a lot. France also, like in Cameroon, France has invested a lot on hydro power plant. But the problem is that the price of this electricity at the end of the day are too high. And this need to be improved. Today, we need to have available electricity, that is one, but also a cheaper one.
And I just want to follow up on that. We've been talking a lot on the program about the tariffs coming from the U.S., from the Trump administration. And I wondered what sort of impact could the tariffs have on the energy sector in Africa?
I would like to say today, it's always, we are in the mondialization period. And that means all action that are initiated everywhere, in US, in France, could be impactful for our continent. But I wanted mostly to highlight the importance of Africa to be thinking with its own view, its own perception, and its own mechanism. Today, for sure, what is initiated in US will have an impact. But I will say this impact will be very limited if in Africa, strategically, we'll begin working a lot with what we have as our resources. You know, on energy, the most important issue on energy planning, it is to look of your proper resources. And after that, to be able to transform these resources by using an appropriate technology. Today, we have wind, we have sun, we have water, we have our proper oil, we have our proper gas, we have even our proper uranium. That means that today, what is important, it is to be able to purchase the required technology wherever the country in the world and to further develop our energy. It is why I will say it is very relative, the impact of all those things that you are talking about, because if we only look on what we could do, we will be able to do things a little bit better.
I wanted to follow up there. You touched a little bit on green energy, talking about solar. There's also nuclear energy in Africa. South Africa, I believe, has the only nuclear power plant. Is that a potential area of investment for the continent, nuclear energy?
Yes. Obviously, nuclear is an option for Africa. And it's not only South Africa. South Africa today, for sure, is operating a nuclear power plant. But recently, also Egypt initiated building several nuclear power plants. Several countries in Africa are also looking for the opportunity of nuclear. You have Rwanda, you have Niger, Nigeria, Kenya. A lot of other countries are looking very carefully and following the recommendation of the International Atomic Energy Agency on that. But what I wanted to say is that a lot of people are putting up solar and renewable energy as an energy that will combat all the other sources of energy. Renewable energy today in Africa are doing very great, especially on rural electrification, or maybe the electrification of people to give a better standard of life for the population. But there is one thing one has to take into consideration, that we need electricity to improve our life, but we also need electricity for our prosperity to develop our industry. That means that the mass electricity. Unfortunately, the solar or maybe the renewable energy, except the hydro one, are not really the mass electricity. They are intermittent and not the mass electricity that will help for the industrial development. It is why we should have a kind of a twin track approach. Building further our, I can say, mass electricity, large scale energy plan, and on the other side also being able to further develop our renewable energy in Africa.
Great. Thank you so much, Vincent.